Good morning, guys. My name is T. It's short for a very long time in. I'm the consul for Royal Thai Embassy. And I'm here today with a very special person from Thailand. This is Ajahn Jayasaro. He's a monk, a very revered monk from Thailand. And he's here today, a very good opportunity to you guys who have an experience too. I know you learn about world religions lately, I know world beliefs and whatnot. This is a good chance to learn more about Buddhism, which is a major religion in Thailand. You feel free to ask him anything that you would like to know. Please.
Yes, so good morning everyone, and please feel free to ask anything you want at all about Buddhism, about monk's life or whatever. Please go ahead.
How did you become a monk?
How did I become a monk? So I grew up in England, and I became interested in Buddhism as a teenager. After I finished high school, I travelled overland. I hitchhiked to India and spent a couple of years travelling and looking for different experiences, and became clear to me the only thing I really wanted to do with my life was study and practice Buddhism. And then I discovered it was possible to become a Buddhist monk in Thailand. And so in 1978, I went to Thailand and joined a monastery, and so I've been there ever since 1978.
มาจากวัดไหนครับ
I'll put Pasangkrit.
What temple are you from?
Yeah, so I was ordained in Wat Pa Pong in Ubon Ratchathani, a disciple of Ajahn, who's one of the most famous Buddhist monks of the last century. Yes.
What, in your opinion, are the benefits of being a monk?
So returning to why I became a monk in the first place. As a teenager, I had sort of two real big questions in my mind and I spent a lot of time alone as a boy because I had asthma. I didn't go to school very much, so I was kind of read a lot of books and spent a lot of time thinking about things. But my two questions was, one, what is the best way to live your life as a human being? And that led me to a second question, was, is that even like a reasonable question? Does it make sense? You can compare two different cars or two different computers, and you have a number of different criteria, and you could say, based on these criteria, this one's better than that one. Okay, but can you do that with a life? Can you say someone who lives their life like this is living their life in a better way than someone who lives their life like that? And if you can, what would be your criteria? What would help you to make that kind of decision or choice or conclusion? So that was the first question. And the second question was, this world is such a mess. There's so much pain and suffering and injustice and cruelty and illness and hunger and so on and so forth, and does it have to be like this? Is it just something you have to shrug your shoulders and say, yeah, this world's like this, it's always been like this? Or could the world be better than it is? And if the world could possibly be better than this, what's your responsibility as an individual human being to help to make the world better in the way you think it should be? So these were the two questions. And so I started reading a lot of philosophy and psychology and books that seemed to have some kind of answer to this kind of question. And eventually I found the teachings of the Buddha just made absolute sense to me. And and so that was really what led me to become a monk. That, it seemed to me the life of a Buddhist monk is one in which I could pursue my own spiritual practices and to develop as a human being, and to live in a life which I felt was the best possible life, but also having been a monk for a certain period of time, I would have the opportunity to share my knowledge and understanding with others and help other people to follow in that same path. So I think everyone will come up, my two questions, people will come up with so many different answers to it. Well, my answer was to become a Buddhist monk and to use the understanding and the benefits that I receive and try to share them with others. Sorry. Yes.
What do you do on a regular basis?
It would vary from place to let me give you a classic or typical day in a monastery in a jungle in northeast Thailand. So the day would begin with the bell being run at 3 a.m. There would be a morning chanting session for the whole monastic community at 3:30, followed by an hour meditation from 4 through to 5. And then after a clean-up period from 5:30 to 7 or more, the monks will split into groups and walk out of the monastery into surrounding villages with their bowls. And there will be people waiting for them there to put food in their bowls to give them their daily meal. And the monks will come back, and then we only eat one meal a day. And that meal is offered about 8 a.m. And so after 9 a.m. everything's completed, then the monks will usually go back to their individual hut. Each monk has a little hut in the forest. And then through the middle of the day, say from 9:30 till 3, they can structure their own practice. So monks may be doing some studying or spending most of the time meditating, or they might have some personal projects. It's up to the individual. And then at 3 p.m. there is a work period for an hour or so. 4:30 is more kind of informal, cup of tea or coffee, fruit juice, chat. And then 6 p.m. shower, 7 p.m. evening service, chanting, meditation. Maybe the senior monk, the abbot, will give a talk or read a book for the community. And so monks will be back at their huts by 9:30 or 10 p.m. And then 3 a.m. the following morning it starts all over again.
When you wanted to become a monk, were there any struggles or complications you faced?
For me, no. I mean, it's I'm not kind of typical of the Western monks who go. I mean, for many there is a big struggle, maybe with family who don't agree, or not really sure, or some monks find it have health problems and going and living in northeast Thailand. And certainly when I was a young man, it's quite a challenging environment with malaria and all kinds of other things. But I just felt this is what I want to do. This is the only thing I want to do. So I was just so committed. And then I found a most wonderful teacher, and I thought I just couldn't believe how lucky I was to find a monastery and a teacher like this. And I thought, yeah, this is it for me. So, but the other thing is, as a Buddhist monk, you don't make like a lifetime vows. In fact, in Thailand, the vast majority of monks are temporary monks. So some are temporary simply because they just. It's long been the Thai custom after a young man who finishes high school, before he goes to university or before he goes to work or before he get married, sometime become a monk for 3 months. So be able to really develop some inner discipline, some mindfulness, some spiritual qualities that can then hopefully be able to make use of in their life in the world as a husband, a father, or whatever in future. And there are others. Of course, if someone maybe get very inspired at the age of 20 and then how you think about life when you're 25 is not the same at 20, or 30 is not the same as 25, and so that the monk's life is kind of tough life, and it's celibate life. So many young men will decide, I don't think I want to do this. I just want to be an ordinary Buddhist and get married and just lead a normal life and follow the Buddhist path in a more relaxed way. And that's completely all right. If someone wants to leave, then they leave. And I sort of say at our monastery, don't want to have anybody here who doesn't want to be here. It just makes life miserable for everyone else. So, if you want to leave and you're really sure you want to leave and you really sort it through, you're not just sort of following the mood of the day or of the moment, then people leave. So there's kind of big turnover. And so it's not like you become a monk and after a while you think, oh dear, what have I done? Stuck here for the rest of my life. You can leave at any time. So it takes a lot of the stress out of the decision to become a monk or a nun in that case.
Have you ever been in Bangkok or like in the city? And if you haven't been in Bangkok, have you been to any temples there?
Yes, I go in and out of Bangkok, at least like once a month, and I am a spiritual advisor to a Buddhist school in Bangkok. So I try to go down and meet with the teachers and the administrators and the children, once a month, certainly during the term. And also I have other teaching engagements, which mean that I'm spending a night or 2 nights in Bangkok.
What specifically about Buddhism really called to you?
I think to begin with, it's practical. See, I can't claim that I have any much knowledge of other religions. I was born in England, but in a quite secular surroundings. So I may be unfair. So this is how it seemed to me, that most religious teachings tell people how they should be, saying you should be like this and you should be like that. And then when you say, yeah, I would like to be like that, but then you say, well, but the problem is I'm not like that. So how can I change myself from how I am now to how you're telling me I should be? And I could never find any really practical advice, something that I could do. What can I do right now? What can I do today? To change myself and be the kind of person that my religion wants me to be. So what I found really refreshing about Buddhism is it's analyzes what's it like right now, and why is it like this, and what can you do about it right now? And it's step by step, and it's very clear and systematic, and thorough and comprehensive. And so I like the idea that kind of systematic approach is not something that's reserved for science. It's science and things outside, but you could apply that same kind of clarity and integrity and to your inner life as well. And I felt that Buddhism gave me the tools to do that.
How much experience do you need to teach? I'm guessing you have to be older than the person you're teaching. Just like you had a teacher, I'm guessing he was older than you when you first started.
It really depends a lot. I mean in the tradition of which I'm a part, we consider the first 5 years training as a kind of apprenticeship, and consider that monks who have less than 5 years experience shouldn't have to teach anybody. I think ideally 10 years is probably a good standard. But sometimes, there just aren't enough monks to go round, or in the monastery, there are some teaching responsibilities, and there are just elder monks, senior monks are just not available. So monks of 6, 7, 8 years would be often finding themselves in teaching position. So the monastic order is arranged as a hierarchy, and that hierarchy, your position in that hierarchy is determined by how long you've been a monk. That's the only criteria. So it's very efficient. Like if like 20 monks were to walk into here, you'd immediately, everybody would know exactly where to sit, because you know exactly where you are in the hierarchy in terms of when you became a monk. So one of the first things when you meet a monk you don't know, one of your first duties is to ask that monk, when did you become a monk? And if he became a monk before you did, then you bow to him. And if he became a monk before you, he bows to you. It's as simple as that. And so teaching will be whoever's at the top of the line, whoever's been a monk the longest. So I think this way of organizing community can be very good. I mean, there's a lot of possible drawbacks to hierarchies that you can, maybe you've studied something like this before, or you will do probably. But there are certain kind of checks and balances that you need on a hierarchical structure. And the most important one, and one which is a key feature of monastic life, is that there is a very extensive set of rules, a monastic discipline, an ethical system, and everyone has to keep those rules. There are no exceptions. So it means that I'm a monk, I've been a monk for 45 years, and I have to keep every single rule that I kept when I was been a monk for one day. It's not like, oh, now you're so senior, you don't have to do that stuff anymore. Or even you're enlightened now, so you don't need to do that anymore. So that means that it's a real protection for young people, because the people at the top can't take advantage of them and claim, well, I used to be like that, but now I'm up here, I don't have to do all that stuff, and you do that, and I don't need to. So that's ideally the protections that are built into that system. But any kind of system has its weak points, and the weak point of a hierarchy, and one determined simply by how long you've been in the group, is that you can have people in leadership positions who are not very competent, who are not very good at what they do, but they're there because they've been around the longest. And you can have very competent people who are quite junior, who don't really have the opportunity to express their talents and to contribute in the way. But that's just, I think, human life. You're always going to have pros and cons with whatever way you set things up, and you just try to mitigate the problems as much as you can.
What are your favorite parts of Buddhism?
I like them all. I don't have a kind of an unfavorite part, really. Sorry, yes?
You said that some monks in the monastery have their own personal projects. What kind of projects do they have?
Sometimes monks have some work projects. Maybe they're making something. Somebody have like wood carving skills. We sew all our own. Monks all have to learn how to sew by hand. We do hand sewing. In fact, when I first came, we had these. Have you seen these pedal sewing machines? Yeah. So we all had to learn how to use those. But the last 10 years, there's been a real kind of back to basics movement in our monasteries, and monks are now sewing all these robes by hand. So a lot of monks get into that. It's kind of like a fun thing to do for monks. And these robes are originally white, and they are dyed with the heartwood of the jackfruit. Do you know what a jackfruit is? Anybody seen a jackfruit? Kanun. Yeah, so it's a tropical fruit, and the tree is the heartwood. The central part of the tree is a dark yellow color. So you chop these up and you boil and you make a dye out of it, and so dye the robes in these colors. And some monks are also doing some writing project or maybe some translation work and translating work, say Western monks, maybe from the Thai masters into their own languages, things like that.
Do you have a project right now?
I have lots of projects. I'm involved in education in 3 schools, in trying to integrate Buddhist developmental principles into education. So one school is a kindergarten and primary school. One school is a boarding school, like an upper school. One school is an IB school, international school in Chiang Mai. I'm like a patron of a number of different charitable foundations. One of them is to try to create a new kind of custom in Thailand. In Thailand, people like to make offerings to monasteries and to donations to various bodies, and trying to create this idea that planting trees is a way of donating, and it's a meritorious thing to do. It's a blessing. And so arranging tree planting projects in monasteries in which lay people can offer the funds or plant the trees themselves. So getting people using Buddhist ideas to enlist people in planting trees and helping the environment. That's another thing. Also, I have some writing and writing projects also. Yeah.
What do you do like at the schools and like with the students?
Well, I'm involved on kind of different levels. I'll be meeting with the governors or the administrators and talking about different problems that about the administration. Talking with different teachers about their own difficulties and challenges, or they have some requests for information. I'm involved in curriculum development, and then I meet with the pupils themselves, just like I'm talking with you today.
Yeah, going back to the projects, what is the biggest project you have done?
Biggest project? I wrote a book, which from when I began the book until when I finished it took me 20 years. So probably that's the longest life. Although I wasn't sort of working on it every day, I put it aside for 3 or 4 years, and then worked on it for a year, and then put it aside for another few years, something. But it was all 20 years altogether. Yeah.
Was there any particular reason for becoming a monk in Thailand and not some other place?
Yes. Well, first of all, because the person who was the real inspiration, person who'd been a Buddhist monk and told me about it, that was obviously one reason. But for me, becoming a Buddhist monk, it was really important. I wanted to be a Buddhist monk in a Buddhist culture. So if you're a Buddhist monk in England or Denmark or somewhere like this, I mean, there are Buddhist monasteries, you can do that now. But it's like a little Buddhist island, and you're kind of a weird fellow. Everybody thinks, why is he dressed like this? But in Thailand, you're part of the culture. And I also had this more, this wish right from the beginning that wanting to contribute to the Buddhist culture and the Buddhist world, on a larger level, not just my own personal spiritual journey. And I think if you're a Buddhist monk in a Western country, you're never going to be able to have that kind of influence. Whereas in Thailand, especially now that I've been a monk so long, that I can have quite a certain influence on people in power and people who make the decisions in the country, and do something for Thai Buddhism as a whole, rather than sort of in a more sort of smaller scale. Yeah. So that was always very important to me, to be able to make that kind of contribution.
One last questions.
Would you say you lived like a busy life, or you live a pretty relaxed life?
I think a lot of people would now say I live a busy life, but I don't feel it. I don't feel busy. I structure my life so I have a lot of time alone. So I live completely alone. I live in a forest of about what do you use, hectares or acres? What's the in Denmark?
Yeah, we like
Square meters.
Huh?
Square meters.
Oh, square meters. What's
Understand policy.
1 ไร่นี่กี่ square meter? Huh?
1,600 square meters.
Oh,
1,000 square is a rai. Okay, so it's about 150 multiplied by what? 1,500. Yeah, it's quite a big forest, and I just live there by myself. And so I go out and I do stuff, and then I come back and I'm completely alone. It's just me and the trees and the animals in the forest. So I can accomplish quite a lot when I go out there and not feel busy, because I have this physical place to come back, and of course through many years of meditation, then I have an inner refuge that to return to. So it's when you develop this through meditation, I thought this new phrase that came up during COVID, like working from home. This is like, if you're a Buddhist monk, you feel like you're working from home. It's like you've got this place within you that you can come back to. Yeah.
I was wondering how long you've been a monk for.
Yeah, so I arrived in Thailand, in 1978. I'd already been living in the monastery. It's like as a lay, someone preparing to become a monk. And I eventually became a fully ordained Buddhist monk in June of 1980. So that's 43 years now.
When you're really preparing to become a monk, what is like the process you have to go through?
It's just sort of keeping your eyes open, basically. I mean, there's a lot of kind of things to learn, like learning some chants and learning how to meditate. And there's a lot of service involved when you're preparing, which is really good, because we tend to be kind of, these days, kind of self-centered, and then having to put your own needs aside, and then taking care of a senior monk. Taking care means like washing their robes for them, cleaning their room for them, or they're sweeping around their kuti for them. Just these sort of basic kind of rules. And the advantage of it is, as a young person, when you do perform acts of service for more senior people, then you get to know them in a kind of more informal way, which you probably otherwise wouldn't, because kind of they're up there and you're down here, So you have these ways of breaking up that hierarchical structure by these more informal relations. And as they say, most of them are expressed as service and looking after the seniors.
Was there anything unexpected that you found in the process of becoming a monk?
Unexpected. Well, you know, the one of the main Buddhist teaching is that everything's unpredictable. You know, nothing's for sure. That's one of the, like sort of the mantras or the meditation. You know, nothing's for sure. Everything's changing. So, as a Buddhist, the idea is you're studying change and understanding change. Because people tend to fall into two groups. You have conservative people, I don't want any change. I want it to stay like this. And then you have young people usually, we just want it to change. It's been like this for ages and it's not working. We want something new. We want change. So people either want to hold on to change, hold on to the status quo, and they fight against change, or they want to go for change. But in Buddhism, the idea is you study change, you understand change. And, you know, it makes sense, doesn't it? In the old way of doing things, there's going to be some things that are worth keeping and some things that are worth throwing away. And new stuff, same. Some is actually good and some's not so good. And some you just don't know. You know, there's a lot of talk now about AI and chat GPT and all these things. We don't know, do we? How's that all going to play out? Nobody knows. So the idea is that you're training yourself to be ready for the unexpected and not to be shocked or, you know, thrown off your stride. Yeah, there's always going to be things that are unexpected. And the Buddha, one of the most famous sayings of the Buddha is, he says, however it will be, it won't be what you think it is. So I remember reading that before I became a monk. So yeah, so when it wasn't the way I thought, oh, the Buddha, he's so wise. He said, it's not going to be the way you think it is, and it isn't.
Did you have to learn Thai to become a monk, or was it just for pleasure?
I wanted to, you know, I wanted to so badly because I was 20 years old and I decided this is where I want to spend my life, you know, and my teacher, he didn't speak a word of English. Well, he could say, can you eat sticky rice? That was all he could say. And so I thought, you know, I've come thousands and thousands of kilometers following my dream, my passion. I found my teacher and I can't understand what he's talking about. So that was a really big motivation for me. But, you know, I kind of love language and I didn't find it difficult. But there are Western monks who go to Thailand. They just, you know, some people just don't have a gift for languages. It just doesn't click for them. And so there are monks who never really learn Thai very well. And now we have many monasteries in other countries. And often the monks who don't learn Thai, they never really feel completely at home because of that. Then they tend to go and live in the monasteries in other countries. But I think you'll notice, like for immigrants into a country, if you've got parents or grandparents and they never really get the language down, they always feel, they don't really feel completely at home like you do, who's grown up here and speak English and Danish just like, you know, completely naturally. You just feel at home here. So language is so important, isn't it, to how you feel about a place and how you feel about a country. And so for me, that was such a big thing, and I could speak Thai, and I just felt so much at home because of that.
Okay. Do believe we ran out of time for today. And thanks you guys for listening. And if you have any more questions, you can contact the embassies, but you can type and you can go on the website of Ajahn Jayasaro to look up its CVs and everything. It's all in English. Thank you very much.